All right. Let me try and get this straight. I will just briefly set up the link and everything, and then we can start. Also, let me know if there are any like weird loops or something, because I'm not sure this is all. Yeah, I'm listening to myself. Just briefly. Oh, and share it with people. That would be nice. So that we can get a bit more people to join in, and we can get a bit more going. All right. Sharing this now on YouTube, on Twitter as well. If you have any questions, let me know. We can get a bit more going. So I'm going to talk about my Nietzsche course, and I'm going to introduce the course bit by bit, but not only that, I also want to introduce how it all works, because I got a lot of questions, and I got questions that I really want to address on how it all works. So I will share my screen with you and also share some share the websites with you that I'm going to use, show you the forum for the course, how it all works, and yeah, and also how Teachable works, because sometimes there's a bit of confusion with when it comes to what the course, how you actually enroll in the course, etc. But what the course will be about ultimately is, and if you have any questions, just put them in the chat and I'll try and answer them. And as I said before, start sharing this, because if you share it, then we get more people to watch, and that means we get more perhaps also good questions on Nietzsche. And Nietzsche, of course, is now everybody's darling almost, which is a bit strange. He's almost like he's predicted it, right? He said there will be departments in my name. The course is entitled Thus Spoke Nietzsche. The subtitle is Nihilism, Life Affirmation, and the Eternal Recurrence of the Same. The course starts next week with the first live lecture and the first group seminar on the 3rd of October, which is a Saturday, and it will run for 7 weeks. During this time, it'll be quite intense, I would say, because it'll be, so there will be live lectures with a foyer, which means that after the live lectures, I'll open up the group breakout rooms on Zoom, so you can meet with your peers. All lectures will be recorded, so if you can't make it, that's fine. You can then listen and watch them. You've got lifetime access on Teachable. And then we'll have, for all those of you who do this, who do the group seminars, we'll do group seminars. And on Saturdays from 6 to 8 p.m. UK time, which I think is 1 p.m. Eastern for the American audience. And yeah, as I said before, there will actually also be group sessions. So probably on a Thursday, most weeks, it might change in some weeks, we'll do a couple of hours of just a digital reading room on Zoom where we all meet. There's not much talking. It's just everyone working on their own things during this time. And during that time, we will also be you can leave. I might leave the room open afterwards, so you can actually then stay in touch. I won't be there to discuss anything, but you can have breakout rooms and discuss further anything with your peers. Usually what happens is that people become friends and then they actually start reading groups, etc. And I wanted to show you now how it works. So I will turn on, how does this work? Share screen. Okay. I'm going to share my screen now. Google Chrome, share. So here, this is what, when you click on the link down below, this is what you will get to. This is where it will lead. Thus spoke Nietzsche. And so you scroll down, it's a bit of a description on, you'll see all the lectures, you see when the lectures take place, what dates, the seminar dates for the group seminars if you choose to do that, and of course also what kind of a content we'll have. Here's some student reviews that I'd like to read those. So for example, here, one of them, I think that's the best one. I found my lifetime's writing project because of you all. The guild has been good to me. So the guild, he means the Halcyon Guild, which is my little thinkers guild and academy. Here Barris says, it was an inspiring course. It was like different views of the original concept are woven together. As Terry Eagleton put it in one of his books about a good life, it should be a jazz band playing a common melody with individual musicians expressing their individuality through solos. It was an evocative experience. So you can read the student reviews on this website. And then there are different pricing options, as they call it here. This is for the self-learners. And currently, when you actually enroll, if you use the coupon, it's 50% off. So this is the price is 50% less than this. So this is for the self-learners, 7 hours of lectures. There's a course library, so you get PDFs of the texts. There's lifetime course access, and of course also access to the forum here on Teachable. Then the philosopher of the future, the highest tier, that's where you get 7 group seminars, 7 lectures, a pro seminar where you can present your own work, but also 7 hours of one-on-one tutorials with me. So this is for someone who really, this is for those of you who really want to either have very intense readings of Nietzsche, or we can use this time to discuss your own work. Well, because if maybe you'd like to write something on Nietzsche, a longer piece, and that's what we can use that time for together. The free spirits, usually that's where most people go for. That's all the lectures, etc., and the group seminars and a digital library, and also something else which is included also in the philosophy of the future, which is this here, my website, and the forum to here, to the Halcyon Guild forum, which you can use to organize reading groups to discuss things. So we've got a small discussion group on German idealism. We're sharing Heidegger passages. So here, I think it might be here in Heidegger on death. Well, yeah, so here's the reading group. I think they're meeting every Sunday. So they're staying in touch here and discussing things and articles that they find. And then, so that was from my Heidegger course from earlier this year. This course now is my 4th online course actually in 2020. So the forum, you get lifetime access to that as well. So you can use this to stay in touch with the people on the course and to, as I said, organize reading groups, etc. I'll come back to this in a bit. Let me now perhaps stop sharing, and I should be back on the screen now, and I'll come back to it in a bit. I think what the course will show you is how important it is really to do something, not just to read the Nietzsche of the published book, because what I will do is I will provide translations from the so-called Nachlass. The Nachlass are the unpublished or posthumously published notes, which, to my knowledge, are not yet available in English. So those I will translate, or I am translating as I'm currently writing the course. And I'm actually also writing a book on Nietzsche. I just finished a book on Heidegger this year, which will be out published by Springer in a couple of months. And as I'm building up this this online academy, this way of making a living as an independent scholar in the 21st century, as a digital peripatetic scholar, I will probably also publish this book myself. So it'll be my first self-published book. If you have any questions, those of you who are watching, just let me know, and I'll be happy to try and answer them if I can. Now, it's really the course focuses on nihilism. The course focuses on the death of God, and also what Nietzsche sees as the promise, as the promise of the death of God, and as a possibility to return to a non-Christian way of being in the world. The response to nihilism for Nietzsche is not a nihilist himself, right? Nietzsche is he wants us to stride through nihilism and to affirm life. Now, what does life mean for Nietzsche? He actually says this in the Fröhliche Wissenschaft. Sorry, let me get this. Here's the Fröhliche Wissenschaft, the gay science, as it's usually translated. And he says in section, this is in the preface to the second edition, he says that life is, or means for us philosophers, to transform everything that's within us, all shadows, all darkness, etc., and everything that hits us into light and flame. That, for Nietzsche, that's life, this transfiguration of darkness, of shadows, etc., into light and flame. So when Nietzsche speaks of life affirmation, what he means is this, is to affirm this transfiguration, this transformation of that into of life, of darkness into light and flame. And so this is going to be one of the main focuses, really, of this course. Is this darkness, is how, what is it that Nietzsche means with amor fati, which is a concept that I think has been completely, well, been a bit misused by self-help as almost like a rationalization mechanism, right? To just find everything great and wonderful, which is not at all what Nietzsche wants us to see, because to affirm life for Nietzsche means to accept and affirm suffering, and in a profound manner, in the Dionysian manner, and that means that it's absolutely necessary for existence. There is no existence without suffering for Nietzsche. There couldn't be. And it would actually mean the death of existence, the end of existence, the end of life, if there were no suffering left. And this is exactly, however, the operations of what Heidegger then called the will to will. So, and if you have questions, ask questions on Nietzsche. So, because I see just someone asks a question on Heidegger and Schelling, that's not the topic. The topic is Nietzsche of this course. And so if you have any questions on Nietzsche, shoot, I might try and answer them. And so, but we'll stay on this topic. And for now, so what is the will to will, or this blind will to power that's running absolutely empty? That's an incomplete nihilism, as Nietzsche describes it in the posthumously published notebooks, an incomplete nihilism that as it finds no stance anymore, nothing that would carry it in the midst of beings, in life, or cannot find anything to hold on to. So it wills more for the sake of willing more power. And as it wills more, there's an ever-increasing cost. And this ever-increasing cost to all is exactly what I will be talking about in the very first lecture. Because in the will to will, in this technological control, that's where nihilism shows itself fully. And there's a Nietzsche that is not yet known, which I discuss in the course. And that's the Nietzsche of the posthumously published notes, which are not known to most scholars in the Anglo-American world, because they don't translate those passages from the nihilists. And one of these quotes is on the uncanny wheelwork. So Nietzsche speaks of an uncanny wheelwork in the, let me pull out the quote. So this is the first lecture on the will to power, and nihilism. So we start actually with nihilism. And Nietzsche speaks here of nihilism is at the door. This is he says this in 1885 in an unpublished note. Nihilism is at the door. Whence does he come? This most unhomely, this most uncanny guest of all. And then he speaks of the following. Once we have that overall economic management of the earth, and he says, which is inevitably in store for us, humanity can find its best sense as a machinery at the service of this management, as an uncanny or unheimlich, unhomely wheelwork of ever smaller, ever more finely adapted wheels, as an ever-growing, becoming superfluous of all dominating and commanding elements. And he ends this as follows. He says, as one can see, what I fight is economic optimism. As if the fact that everybody's expenses rise necessarily implied that everybody's benefits rise as well. So this is the first lecture, really focusing on Nietzsche's profound insight into how the will to power will manifest, or is manifesting, in this uncanny total economic management of the earth, which serves no purpose. He ends this as follows, and he says, at the end of it, we will no longer know what this enormous process, this monstrous process, was good for. A what for, a new what for. This is what humanity needs. So the course is about, it's about coming in, it begins on nihilism and how nihilism manifests and shows itself in this total economic management of the earth, and then how Nietzsche from early on tries to respond to the crisis of modernity in the early beginnings, and the project of cultural rejuvenation with the birth of tragedy and the text on the use and abuse of history for life. This is not Heidegger's critique of the will to power, because someone is asking, I don't fully grasp Heidegger's critique of will to power and eternal recurrence. I always thought of those concepts as concepts of novelty and newness and not as mechanical will. So I'm not presenting Heidegger's Nietzsche, just to be very clear. I'm writing my own book on Nietzsche. Heidegger has one way of understanding the will to power as it develops into a will to will. That's one way of interpreting it. And the will to power is not only, but also, it's never one-dimensional. It is also an empty turning around and about itself. If it is not accepted and responded to with a new what for, which would mean to posit again the value of life anew, which is exactly what Nietzsche wants. And and by the way, the eternal recurrence of the same, this is something we get to in the course as well, is very similar. The eternal recurrence of the same, if responded to properly, that's indeed one in which, by the way, I would not say eternal recurrence of the same, it's the eternal recurrence of the like, of a likeness and not sameness or identity. There's always room for freedom and development in this recurrence. Those can be, if properly responded to, indeed openings in history, insofar as we then remember the past properly and repeat it properly and make it our own. But if not responded to properly, the eternal recurrence of the same becomes an eternal repetition of the ever same. And that's what the technological economic management of the earth is ultimately all about. And so what I'm trying to say is there are different ways of responding to these issues, and how we respond to those is really how then something plays out for us in history. If you take Nietzsche seriously, then time is now moving as according to the eternal recurrence of the same. So that's the first lecture, really, and we come back to this the entire time. In the second lecture, The Birth of Tragedy, is something I've just finished writing. So just to mention this again, I'm writing a book on Nietzsche, and this book I will present for the first time during this lecture course, and then probably publish it afterwards on my own. My first experiment with a self-publication, and which I haven't done before. I've published with Halcyon, I published a book of a friend of mine called Sean Burke. The book's Winter and Summer, which is actually also quite a Nietzschean book. And so while we are doing the course, you are witnessing me writing a book. I would so it's almost the old way, right? It used to be you write an original lecture script, and you present that lecture, and then there's a discussion amongst students. So I'm trying to revive this old way of teaching, which is not very often anymore in place within the halls of academia, at least not in the Anglo-American world. So that's my contribution to. By the way, I think that Nietzsche is all about birth. And this is what the course basically will be about. It's life affirmation, say amor fati, and birth, giving birth to a new world, giving birth to a new life and star. Oh, it's wonderful. Asad, I hope I pronounce this correctly. Asad or Ashad Umer says, thank you. I really appreciate your videos. I'm doing my MA thesis on Heidegger's thought on technology and what he understands as thing. Very good topic. Super. Your videos are very helpful. Thank you. That's great to hear. That's why I do this. I put out these videos. I hope that they are helpful and as lectures, as guidance. And I would also encourage everyone to, when you take these, when you listen to the videos, listen to them as if they are, really proper lectures, because I think that they are, and that they help you understand something, to take notes. And this is what the course, I guess, will be like as well. So let me just perhaps show again what the course then will look like inside. Once you are, how do you do this? Share screen, Chrome. Yes. Okay, I'm learning. So this is what the course curriculum looks like. So you can see here the 7 lectures: Will to Power, Birth of Tragedy, Death of God, Amor Fati, Eternal Recurrence, Beyond Good and Evil, and Zarathustra. So for now, I haven't uploaded the videos yet, because the videos will be live recorded and then uploaded, but the texts are being uploaded now currently, and I'm also uploading a course library. So that means you get access to the PDFs which you need here. And when you actually sign up, this is how it works. You can enroll here, for example, here. By the way, there's a code that you can use, which is Nietzsche 50. I think it should all be down there. If you use that, you get 50% off now. So if you go here, is this working? You should be able to enroll. People have enrolled, and I see that people are actually enrolling as we speak, which is nice. So I'd like to, let's just say this is the thing, the tier that most people go for is this one. And then what you do, because this is always sometimes a question people ask. So if you click here, add coupon, and you type in or copy paste Nietzsche 50 and you apply it, it should work. Yes, so it goes down. The VAT might be different where you are. I'm in the UK, I'm in London. You might be in Europe, you might be in the US. I think there's no VAT in the US. So it should be less for you there a bit. And you can use all kinds of, you pay by card or whatever. And if you type in that coupon here, that should reduce it for all of them. And I want to just say again, so this is what most people choose: 7 lectures, 7 group seminars, and a pro seminar. Maybe I should explain what the pro seminar is. The pro seminar means that we meet in addition to all the group seminars, where you can present your own talk, loosely based on the lecture course. And we can do this either publicly or privately. That means you can either, I'm just coming back now. You can either present just for your peers, or record it and then put it on my YouTube channel. So if you are some sort of an indie scholar or someone who wants to build a bit of a following, or if you actually are a scholar and would like to get into that sharing knowledge in this way too, then you can do it and start it maybe with this pro seminar. And yeah, so this is the second tier. Let me just maybe briefly again go through all the lectures. So when first lecture will to power nihilism. Second lecture is on the birth of tragedy. And the birth of tragedy and the use and abuse of history for life, as Nietzsche calls it. I think that those two texts are connected insofar as only if we understand the birth of tragedy as a monumental work of history can we understand what Nietzsche wants with it. He wants the rebirth of tragedy. He wants the rebirth of tragedy. And he gives the leitmotif of Zarathustra is incipit tragedia. Tragedy begins. Latin, so you might pronounce it differently than me, but incipit tragedia, tragedy begins, is the leitmotif of Zarathustra. Nietzsche's all about bringing back the tragic sense into existence. Tragic existence is what Nietzsche is all about. And the tragic means that the absurdity of existence is justified through what Nietzsche calls the Apollonian, to a measured stance in the world, finding and setting values that are life-affirming in the face of the irresolvable mystery at the heart of existence. So I would really like to invite you to sign up now and enroll and make the get into this kind of online studying. And if you have any questions, by the way, that you'd like me to answer, you can send me an email, or you can just leave a comment now here, either on the live stream or just down below, and I'll try and respond to those. So let me see, I've got the syllabus open. The third lecture will be on the death of God. Nietzsche's engagement with nihilism is not something that when he starts out, The Birth of Tragedy that I just mentioned, he speaks more about pessimism, and he actually says that optimism is a sign of decay. Optimism is a sign of weakness and decay. And pessimism, a strong pessimism, as for example found in Greek tragedy, that to Nietzsche is a sign of strength. And so the early Nietzsche is engaged in the question of weak pessimism and strong pessimism. He wants to argue in favor of a strong pessimism. The later Nietzsche begins to be interested in nihilism, and especially so in the Nachlass, the posthumously published notes. Nietzsche does not say very much about nihilism in the published works. And nihilism for Nietzsche is an uncanny guest that is now about to become the history of Europe for the next 200 years, according to him. And of course, it has to do with the death of the Christian God, of the Christian moral hypothesis, which for Nietzsche at once was nihilistic in the sense that it was life-denying, but it was also a bulwark against nihilism. So it was, you can almost say in a very different language from Nietzsche, it was almost like a system that held everything at bay. And by doing so, religion, Christianity was able to keep nihilism out. What is nihilism? Nihilism is this force that destroys meaning, orientation, sense, and utterly makes it impossible to find any grounding. And that's what Nietzsche fears will come, but also what he says we absolutely have to live through and affirm. And if we don't affirm it, it will not be, we will not get out of it. We have to stride through nihilism. Without striding through it, it will not be overcome. So to overcome nihilism means to affirm it. It means to affirm utter disorientation, meaninglessness, and then to stride through it. We'll get in the course, we'll get to what this might look like and what kind of, life affirmation then means. It, again, to say what I said before, it means to be able to transfigure all darkness into light and flame, as he says. And of course, when someone like Nietzsche speaks of flame, he means the pur aietzoon, the ever-living fire of Heraclitus. So in the third, especially in the third lecture, I will very much work in the notebooks from this time of the mid-1880s and later, and translate those from the German into English. And then, of course, we have to ask, what is the great yes to life? That's one lecture just on amor fati and the eternal recurrence of the same that I've mentioned before. Now, I'd like to, maybe for those who've just come in, because there are people coming in and out, as I can see, I'd like to show again what different tiers there are, and in terms of the group, the course. So if you sign up now, you could get 50% off for early enrollment. The course starts next week. October 3rd is the first group seminar. And if you click on the link below to Teachable, that's a platform I use, you use the coupon Nietzsche50, you get 50% off. So here, this is what this will look like when you're here. And then you go on 7 hours. So Life Affirmers, that's for all those of you who just want to study on your own. 7 hours of lectures, video, audio, and of course the text files as well. There's a course library, that means there's PDFs. of the texts that we read from Nietzsche. There's lifetime course access. So as long as you don't lose your login, you can listen to it all eternally recurring. And there's an access to the course forum here on Teachable. The second tier, which is what most people choose, and by the way, see, I can show you what this looks like if you, so you scroll down, you enroll now, and then you type in Nietzsche 50, you apply it, and it goes down by 50%. That's second tier, and that's valid for all 3 tiers, by the way, for now. So choose the one that you like the most. As I said, the second one, free spirits, as I call it, that's the one that most people choose. Some people always choose the highest tier as well, where you get one-on-one with me, where we just have one-on-one office hours. So what we do here in the second tier is there's a group seminars that I lead, where we meet Saturdays for 7 weeks from 6 to 8 UK time. I think that's 1 to 3 US Eastern. There's a forum membership, which means you get access to the Halcyon Guild forum, which is the guild, the online academy that I'm building. Where you can stay in touch with your peers and start reading groups and whatever. So lifetime course content, access, etc., etc. But also, in addition to the group seminars, a Zoom study group. That means we meet once a week, maybe Wednesdays, maybe Thursdays, I haven't decided yet, for about 2 hours or 3 hours, where I leave Zoom open, and we will silently work together just to get a few things done. It's like a digital reading room or study room. So that's the Zoom study group in addition to the group seminars. So there's not much discussion going on. By the way, I should mention, everyone who can make it to the live lectures, I will open up. So I will be live. I will be reading the lecture. I will maybe take 1 or 2 questions afterwards, and then open up breakout rooms. I won't be available during those, but let's say there's 20, 30 people on the course, and however many show up, I will open up a reading, a breakout room for about 10, say it's 30 people, probably open up 10 groups, and then you'll be 3 people in the groups, and you can just discuss in the foyer for as long as you want. I'll just leave it open. And the highest tier, as I call it, the philosopher of the future, that's everything, including also 7 hours of, and we always go a bit over, of one-on-one tutorials with me. This is for someone who wants to write. I actually know a guy who found his lifetime writing project thanks to my previous courses this year. And people, either you want to write something and I'll help you with that, or we can have more in-depth discussions about Nietzsche and modernity and nihilism and life affirmation, etc. And of course, if you enroll now, it's 70% off. If you have any questions, by the way, just ask. And in the meantime, also feel free to share this live stream with your friends who might be interested in Nietzsche or philosophy. I think, just to summarize again what the course is about, Nietzsche to me is the one who suffered through the malaise of nihilism and modernity like no thinker before him, and perhaps no one like him afterwards. And in this course, we will delve into his accounts of nihilism, the death of God, and Nietzsche's unique response to the sickness that is modernity. The responses are amor fati and the eternal recurrence of the same. And art, of course, is the means and the goal of this great yes to life. Where art and life go together for Nietzsche. I think art is ultimately that related to life in the sense that art can be is this transfiguration of shadows into light and flame. And the course is based not only on Nietzsche's major works, but also his unpublished notes, which most of them are not yet available in English. And so we are, you can almost say we're striding through nihilism in the course. I'd really like to make this clear that it won't be easy. It is an academic course, and Nietzsche is a lot more difficult than perhaps some would like to admit. He is a very profound thinker, and we will also, however, of course, discuss the limitations of his thought. And I think one of the limitations is that he's trapped in a very not only because with Nietzsche it's never that easy, but to some degree he is trapped in a crude subjectivism. By the way, if you have any questions, just ask. There's a live chat, so you can just ask a question, and if I can answer it philosophically, I will try. So feel free to ask if anything on Nietzsche or on the course. Let me know. It's better to ask now than maybe later. You can also send me an email if you want. And yeah, so the and what I would also like to stress is I'm doing it old school. That means I'm writing a book. I'm reading the lectures to you, the chapters of the book, and whatever we discuss then in the seminars will very likely, some of it will also make it into the book. We'll just end up in the book necessarily, because it's in discussion that we learn more and the most. Here's my favorite quote from Zarathustra. Not only the reason of millennia, the madness too breaks out in us. It is dangerous to be an heir. And that's where we are, right? Nietzsche, in his critique of enlightenment, he sees that reason gathers around itself the irrational inevitably. And Nietzsche wants to get beyond that schema. Nietzsche wants to get out of it. Nietzsche wants to arrive at a life-affirming way of being, of being in the of setting values. Really, I mean, what Nietzsche is all about. And this is another problem with Nietzsche, right? Is the talk of values, of value setting, of making values. However, I want to really emphasize that there is a Nietzsche that is beyond the bumper sticker Nietzsche, beyond the Nietzsche that's very loud and all trying to be maybe a bit too much for certain I don't know, yeah, certain effectivity. He's there's a silent Nietzsche too, right? So the Übermensch, the Übermensch is not some brutal, strong-willed enforcer. The Übermensch is a calm type who is the bridge beyond the last man, which is absolutely necessary for Nietzsche to go beyond the last man. The last man is the man of consumerism, the man who has invented happiness, as Nietzsche says in Zarathustra in the preface, who flattens the earth. And you can understand this as who homogenizes the earth and sucks out all beauty and meaning from it. And it's, to me, very important to see that there is a Nietzsche that's beyond just the bombastic Nietzsche. There is a Nietzsche who is calm and measured, and it's difficult to find him, but we will try and find that Nietzsche in order to understand nihilism properly, and also to understand whether there is anything to his ways of trying to overcome nihilism. And oh, someone just says like your lectures, so thank you very much for that. It's very kind. So yeah, if you like the lectures and you want to, so literally the best way to support, maybe just say this: I'm an independent scholar. That means I try to make my living with this, and one of the best ways to support me is by enrolling in one of my courses. It's it helps to keep the lights on, as always, but it does more than just that, right? It's not just about the material needs. It is there is the writing and the reading, which is what you do on your own, but it needs to be shared with others, and only in this sharing can it become it takes on its own life, and you can find out whether what you think is getting at anything or not. And so and I'm very grateful that it's been going really well this year. This is going to be my 4th online course in 2020. The first one was on Heidegger and Deleuze. That was with Justin Murphy. Second one was then on my own platform entitled Idleness with Dignity, with a lot of really good students. And the same was true for my Heidegger course, Heidegger on Death and Being. Really incredible students. And some of them now from those 2 courses, they've started running reading groups, and I think they meet once a week. And I'm in touch with them through the forum. And so yeah, this is really it's amazing to see, because it is kind of the idea. It is the idea of an academy, right? It is the idea of facilitating a community, which is what a professor usually does. And then there's self-motivated studying. And the motto, the leitmotif, there are 2 actually of my academy, is one from Schelling. Someone asked a question about Schelling before, which I didn't want to answer because this is now on Heidegger and on Nietzsche. The Schelling said, "Learn only in order to create." That's the leitmotif of my academy. And the other leitmotif is from Cicero, "Otium cum dignitate," leisure with dignity. The spaces that we have, the group seminars, really are spaces for idleness or leisure with dignity. There is no marking. There is no, it's not about getting a piece of paper or some kind of a credential. It's an open forum for dialogue and philosophical thought, which is completely free from instrumentality. There's nothing to be gained aside from insight and understanding of what it means to be and what it might mean to be in the coming decades and maybe even centuries. So yeah, I mean, Nietzsche is a dangerous thinker. Someone just asked, is Nietzsche a dangerous thinker? I think Nietzsche is dangerous. Every thinker is dangerous. I mean, if a thinker isn't dangerous, then probably he hasn't thought very much. But I think we have to be careful, because Nietzsche can be made use of by anyone, right? It can be. He can be radically left-wing, radically right-wing, whatever. That's, for me, beyond that doesn't tell us anything about what he's got to say. Very often when you label someone, what you don't want to face up to is what this thinker really has to say, which could reveal something much more profound than any kind of dialectical politics. Which, if Nietzsche is right, and the history of the next 200 years is nihilism, and the total, as he says, right, the total economic management of the earth, what does this remind us of, is inevitably in store for us. And it will lead to an end game where the entire process will show itself to be meaningless. Well, then that would mean that we really have to begin to ask the question, what for? And that's so, very often when someone is considered dangerous, of course, this is dangerous to say, well, what is it really for? And this danger is not something perhaps that some would like to face. So someone just said, I will become a patron. Thank you very much. That's highly appreciated. It's made possible with people enrolling in the courses and Patreon supporters, etc. So yeah, if you have any questions on enrollment, etc., just let me know. If you enroll now, it's the link just down below. I might maybe it makes it easier for you if I do it like this. Let me just see. Sorry, I'm gonna put this myself in. I like that. Someone just said, thank you for that response. I will try emulate that sentiment to my herd-like contemporaries who, without reading Nietzsche, have completely discounted him. But that's very interesting, right? So Nietzsche, of course, speaks of the herd. By the way, just briefly, I just shared the link where you can enroll, and then you type in Nietzsche 50 at the checkout, and that gives 50% off. For now, that's early enrollment. And yes, the herd-like. But it's funny how this works, right? How the last man is so incredible. Nietzsche says the last man lives longest, and at the same time, he's like a beetle who flattens the earth and does not want to give birth to a new world. And the entire course will be on. I think so. I think my book, as I'm realizing now as I'm writing it, Nietzsche is all about trying to help bring about a new world. It's about birth. By the way, just so you know, I've written a book on death in Heidegger. So I'm turning now from death to birth, I guess. And Nietzsche is at this cusp, at the utter edge, the utter limit of what can be thought within a certain framework. And this is why he says, I am inverting Platonism. I'm at the inversion point, and he has to go through all of these motions. And by the way, I also see that Nietzsche's this seeming self-destruction almost, right? When Nietzsche collapses in the streets, in the streets of Torino, in Italy, northern Italy, I don't see this as some sort of, he had syphilis, and now it's no longer syphilis, by the way, now it's supposedly something else. No, I think Nietzsche collapsed because of his way of thinking. Because he had to carry out all these contradictions within himself. When you read the notes, especially from the later time, what he's going through in his thinking is incredible. Right? Thinking is not just some abstract thought that you can quibble about. No, it's how we access the world. And once you really begin to stare into the abyss, it is getting dangerous. Yes. Truly dangerous, though, not in this benign dialectical political way of, he's this wing or that wing. but in a profound existential sense, in this profound Dionysian sense, where if you take and Nietzsche says, ich bin der Jünger des Dionysos, I'm the follower of Dionysus, I'm his prophet. What does that mean? Well, that would mean that he's completely in agreement with, or must actually carry out somehow in his thinking, that irresolvable mystery at the heart of existence, death itself, of course, again, and at the same time wanting to go beyond and give birth to a rising star. He speaks of the tension of the bow, the tension of the arrow and the bow, and he wants to finally allow for that arrow to fly and to go beyond. And he sees, I think, the possibility for a rebirth, a rinascimento. That's what a renaissance means. And but it will come at the cost of hundreds of years of nihilism, but only if that nihilism gets completed. In an incomplete nihilism, the desert just keeps growing. And so the and I think this is why I just read this before, I read it again. Not only the reason of millennia, the madness too breaks out in us. It is dangerous to be an heir. And this danger is exactly what Nietzsche is living through, that we are at what people have called the end of history, where the future just seems to be a black wall, a black block against which we're getting pushed. And all of a sudden, all of history becomes all weirdly available as data and isms, etc. But no birthful or pregnant thinking is any longer possible, or seemingly impossible. And against this, Nietzsche writes, against this sentiment of destruction and nihilism of the desert. So someone is asking, do you think also nihilism existed with the Romans compared to the Greeks, where the calculation or civilization comes in? So I will not probably comment on the word civilization, but calculation, the Greeks were mathematicians all the same, and geometricians, etc. However, what we can say in cultural terms, what the Romans were, they're copycats. They don't have their own gods. They don't make all that many of their own experiences in terms of thinking. Heidegger says in an essay which is entitled "On the Origin of the Work of Art" that the translation from Greek into Latin without making without making any experience of thinking, but just translating those words, that's generating simulacra. And that is a form, of course, of nihilism. That is a form of nihilism. Because it crowds out the meaning and the experience that is encapsulated in language. And calculation itself isn't wrong or anything, but counting simply for the sake of counting, calculating only for the sake of calculating, that is a problem. Because it lacks the what for, right? This is like, so we need to generate profit. Well, why? Well, in order to optimize this or maximize blah, 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 blah. And it doesn't find a what for that it strives towards. It doesn't find it. It cannot find a ground in it. And if you posit that profit maximization is the highest what for that there could be, that's very easily refuted, right? Because profit itself is always for something else. It's never self-sustaining, and it never finds a stance in the midst of beings. And it never finds anything to hold on to. It needs to generate more of itself, of profit needs more. It needs to generate more of itself the entire time. So yeah, if whoever's just signing in, but is not, so someone's asking, it is not translation copy of form in a sense seen as transformation in order to achieve transcendence? You would have to say a bit more on this question. That question is not clear to me. But I did actually record a dialogue today with Daniel Tsaruba, who was a student on some of my courses this year, which is on translation. He's a scholar of Japanese studies. And we talk about the problem of translation. I do not think that everything can simply be translated. I think that language is not just a system of signs, or that words simply correspond to each other. I speak several languages, including Latin and ancient Greek. So obviously I'm originally from Germany. I speak Italian and English. I know ancient Greek and Latin, and it is almost impossible to say, especially in philosophy or poetry, exactly what someone else is, what some thinker is saying. It's rarely possible to translate, if by translate we mean just to transfer the meaning from one word to another language, and then assume that this is somehow perfectly corresponding to this before, right? So this is where the danger always comes in when we have a word that, like Dasein, which now everybody who studies Heidegger in philosophy and who's maybe in America just says Dasein, which is not a word that doesn't exist, and it begins to take on its own meaning. But the experience that Heidegger makes with the word Dasein, the openness of the there, right, to being, that perhaps is forgotten. Right? Just like Ereignis is not the event, or Gestell is not enframing. It couldn't be further from enframing. So however, on Nietzsche, luckily, is a bit easier to translate than Heidegger. And so I'm just thinking maybe I'll go through the lectures again. 7 lectures for 7 weeks, starting next week. Will to Power will be first, and the uncanny will work. And I will work in, because I don't know how many people just came in now. I will work in a lot of this from the Nachlass, the posthumously published notebooks. So of course we'll read most all of the important texts by Nietzsche, but we will also consider the Nachlass. That means the notes, the notebooks of his that were, to my knowledge, are not yet really available in English. Some of them might be, but certainly not all of them, and I will work them in. And it's very important, because the Nietzsche who speaks of nihilism, that's a Nietzsche we only actually find in where? In these posthumously published notes. We don't find much about nihilism in his major works. So if we want to understand what Nietzsche means by the different forms of nihilism, like, for example, incomplete nihilism, a strong nihilism, etc., then we have to go to these notebooks, and I will translate them from German into English. So one of the quotes, for example, is that nihilism is the history of Europe for the next 200 years. That's a quote from the Nachlass, from the notes. Another one is that nihilism is the uncanny, the most uncanny, the unheimlichste, the most unhomely guest of all on the door, at the door of Europe. Again, it's always about Europe. And so it begins on tying together the will to power and the uncanny wheelwork of the total economic management of the earth. Another note from the Nachlass. The second lecture on the birth of tragedy and the monumental history, the Apollonian and the Dionysian, and a way of affirming life in the face of a life stifling or life denying almost historiography, an explosion of historiography. The death of God then is the third lecture. The death of God, of course, is found in The Gay Science, in the chapter on Der tolle Mensch, the madman, as it's usually translated. And the death of God goes together with nihilism and the history of the next 200 years. And as you might know from reading The Madman, this comes back to Nietzsche being a dangerous thinker. Those I think Atheism Inc. By Richard Dawkins and others has basically, or Hitchens or whatever his name was, that basically disappeared. That's no longer, they're no longer that relevant. But that kind of happy-go-lucky 2000 Nord years and 2010 years of, as they did in London 7 years ago, where they had ads on buses saying, don't worry, there's no God. Nietzsche saw kind of this already in his time, and The Madman is an exemplary of that there will be this kind of complete indifference towards the death of God. And that in itself is a rather strange occurrence, isn't it? Because he says in that passage, we have killed him, we have killed God, and we have also thereby wiped away the horizon. And this wiping away of the horizon means that now we are pushed into an empty space, devoid and devoiding of meaning. And this voiding of meaning, we have to respond to and take seriously. If we don't, then the last man reigns and incomplete nihilism stays with us forevermore. Now, that will be the third lecture. The fourth lecture formulates the great yes to life, amor fati. What does Nietzsche mean by life? We find the one answer to it in the preface to the second edition of Die fröhliche Wissenschaft, the gay science. And what does Nietzsche mean by that? The gay science means to know what not to know what to forget. And, well, what is life? He says, life means to be able to transfigure, transform everything that happens to us, or that we are, so our shadows, to transfigure that into light and flame. That's life for Nietzsche. That's what life is. That's the process of life. And then to affirm life means to be able to affirm this movement, this process. So here we are. That's amor fati in a nutshell. Amor fati, to affirm fate, but not fate in the kind of fatalistic sense, but necessity, ananke. And he says, by the way, also that the Greeks, the Greek gods are not, they were not so stupid to accept responsibility for the creation of this world. There is no creator God, according to Nietzsche, in the Greeks, at least during the time of the Greek tragedy. And because even the gods, the Olympic gods, are under the rule, are subjected to ananke. That's an ancient Greek word, and that means necessity. By the way, just to mention this, Giorgio Agamben claims somewhere that Nietzsche's eternal recurrence of the same is just a Leibnizian theodicy. That's so wrong. I don't even know where to begin. So in Leibniz, there's a creator God. The Odyssey looks at the world from a purely moral perspective in terms of good and evil. And Leibniz tries to argue how it could be that there is evil in a world created by a perfectly good world. That itself is already so far removed from Nietzsche, who is a non-moral thinker from early on. He says, let's look at one of the essays. One of the early essays is look at lying im außermoralischen Sinne, in a non-moral sense. So Agamben, he's a culture page writer, I think. It's the eternal recurrence of the same is not a theodicy. There is no creator God in Nietzsche. Yes, it's about justifying life and justifying the world, especially in the face of nihilism, but it's not about justifying a created world created by a good God in the face of evil. Nietzsche is, as you know, beyond good and evil. So careful with these kind of, this is, by the way, this is how you can recognize whether someone can move in what we call in German Begriffszusammenhänge, like, kind of the how concepts really belong together and hang together in what's usually called history. So that's not what Nietzsche is after. He's after a justification of the world, about setting values that are life affirming, yes, but in the face of Ananke, of necessity, of affirming everything is necessary, and that, again, that is where it gets dangerous. So while we're on the on the eternal recurrence of the same, I will be I'll recur again here to how to enroll in the course. And if you, as I said before, so you click on the link down below to Teachable, and this is what you should be seeing right now. I think you should be seeing this the screen now. Thus spoke Nietzsche. You can scroll down, and then you find what the lectures are. You'll see when they take place. If you want to participate in the live lectures, if you cannot, that's fine, because they will be recorded and uploaded to the platform here. Seminars start on the 3rd of October. They run for 7 weeks, 6 to 8 p.m. UK time on Saturdays. That time, 6 to 8 p.m. UK time, should be 1 to 3 Eastern in the US. Yeah, the unknown Nietzsche. I will be working in a lot of Nietzsche that's not yet written about. And so here's some student reviews if you want to see what my courses have helped them, my students, how they've kind of profited from them. And so here we have the different tiers. Let me start with the highest tier, Philosophy of the Future. 7 lectures, video, audio, text, 7 group seminars, pro seminar, where you can present your talk, and of course then 7 hours of tutorials with me. And that means one-on-one. It's just you and me in a meeting for 1 hour. I always go a bit over, and we then discuss either a very intense reading of Nietzsche's texts. We could just focus on one text, or we can focus on your own writings if you want to write something. And let me show you something else. Here's the forum. So everyone who signs up for the 2nd and the 3rd tier, you get access to the Halcyon Guild forum, where you can stay in touch with your friends. I think they're running a couple of reading groups, Heidegger and Nishitani at the moment. And this one here, the 2nd one, that's usually what most people go for. It's 7 lectures, video, audio, and text. It'll be more than 7 hours, I think, given how much I'm writing at the moment. Then the 7 group seminars led by me. Again, the pro seminar, and forum membership in the forum that I just showed you in this one here, the Halcyon forum. and access to the Zoom study group. That means we meet once a week in addition to the group seminars. We don't discuss anything here. We just sit there on Zoom together while each of us is working on, it's on mute, everything. We're working on different projects during the time. I will be writing my lectures during that time. It might depend, might change from week to week. Might be on Wednesday, might be on Thursday. But that'll be decided early on next week. And then, of course, always some people choose this, which is very good for everyone who just wants to listen to this whenever it's good for you. You've got lifetime access anyways. So you can participate in the live lectures if you have the time to do that. And if not, that's fine. Everything will be recorded and uploaded here. And I think, I don't know. No, I can't. I don't find it now. But anyway, so yeah, these are someone's asking something interesting. So what kind of fate do you think Amor Fati would be closer to? The Greek inevitableness, the Christian revelation, or closer to the Norse weird word? Or would he not be responding to a tradition? I think he's, of course, responding to a tradition. It's very interesting you bringing in the word weird, right? The English knows the word weird too. After word comes weird is an old English saying, which is a very interesting saying. I think that Nietzsche responds mostly to the inevitableness of the Greeks. The tragic sense is to denon, das Furchtbare, the terrible, which occurs all of a sudden in Greek tragedy in the plays, and cannot be. That's the moment when the fate of the hero is decided inevitably, and the hero still bears it and is capable of affirming that inevitableness. However, and this is something we can work out in the seminars, and I'll try and work this out in my writing. There's always room within this so-called inevitableness, thanks to the eternal recurrence of the like, for another horizon to open up. I think that's maybe one way of putting it. This is very difficult to say just on the spot, but I think in affirming the inevitableness, maybe that's one way of putting it, in affirming the inevitable, that's when we begin to see something else. It's precisely by assuming that everything can be perfectly controlled and managed and pre-configured, etc. That's when we lose the plot, I think. Camilo asks, why do you think the ethical stance of most atheists is relentlessly anti-suffering? Well, because they couldn't make sense of the world. If they are actually right, that this is just some sort of an accident of evolution, this planet, and well, then what justifies suffering? They cannot justify it, so they have to be against it. You see, we're always justifying. This is what we're going to do anyways. And if we're not accepting of suffering, and at the same time not accepting the death of God as a proper historical event that is an earthquake still shaking us now, then we become what Nietzsche calls great destroyers, bearers of desert, people who will bring the desert in the name of the good, in the name of optimism. We will bring non-suffering to the world. Here's your pill. And now go back to sleep. So, no going back to sleep in my course. no, it's always going to come back to this, right? I mean, you once you begin to see with Nietzsche what we're living through, you see it everywhere. It's incomplete nihilism. It's a nihilism that wants to justify the world in the name of the good, and that can, you know, we can bomb democracy into existence, or we can create the world where there is no suffering. We're all just at home, contained, happy, last man like, docile and dormant. Whether that's affirming life, I don't know. It's actually not life affirming. It's affirming life in the sense of just, you know, pure organic extension of the quantity of years. Yeah, but that's not life affirmation, because it crowds out the shadows, and that, again, that which happens to us to be transformed into light and flame. Now, how do we understand flame in Nietzsche? Well, flame could be the ever-living fire of Heraclitus, and that is spirit, to speak with Hegel, and not utter boredom and silliness. Because, you know, once a real crisis hits, you can see how the last man reacts, right? So let me, maybe in closing, say again that I would really appreciate if you could share the video, and if you can, sign up, enroll in the course. It helps me to continue to build this academy and to do the intellectual work that I do. As I said before, I'm an independent scholar. That means, you know, I put out video lectures that are helpful to some, I think, and some people have left the comments also, which is I'm very happy to hear. And what allows me to keep doing it is either Patreon, and of course, if people enroll in the courses. So I'm more than, yeah, I'm really looking forward to the course, and I'm really looking forward to meeting you. It usually leads to people becoming friends and discussing and continuing their studies. And I said before, the leitmotif is Schelling's learn only in order to create. And I hope that that course will give birth to that. Camillo just said, would 10 out of 10 recommend? Camillo is, I would say, now a friend of mine. He is from South Africa, and he's done all 3 courses this year, and he's going to do the 4th course now as well. And so I'm looking forward to have Camillo back, and hopefully many of you as well. As I said before, you can use this link just down below. I'll keep enrollment open a couple more days, and you use Nietzsche 50 and you get 50% off. And any more questions that you have, you can leave a comment also just down below on YouTube, or you send me an email, because then I can get back to you. If you have any more specific questions, I can also send you the course syllabus if you want, so you can have a look at that. And as I said before, we will, you know, this will be a quite intense time. 7 weeks, 7 lectures, 7 group seminars, and a good time to get into studying now that winter's coming, right? And maybe also it will hopefully lead to a way of articulating for yourself responses to this utter crisis that we are pushing against and living through. So thank you all very much for listening, and for sharing, and for enrolling. And yeah, see you all very soon. Ciao.